Hey guys, good morning. So I want to do the UFC 270 Ngannou versus Gane fight predictions and the breakdown. So first, I'm just gonna get started with the prelims right off the hop. The first fight is in the welterweight division, 170. It's Jack Della Madalena versus Pete Rodriguez. Now, Jack Della Madalena is 10 wins, 2 losses. He's on a 10-fight win streak, so he lost his first 2 pro fights, then won the next 10, which is pretty impressive. He's making his UFC debut. He's won his last fight on Dana White's Contender Series to get a contract to the UFC. I watched that fight, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but talk about Pete Rodriguez quick. He's 4-0. 6 wins on a 6-fight win streak, 4 pro and 2 amateur. So he's pretty new to pro. He's only got 4 pro fights so far, but all of those were finishes, all knockouts in the first round. So his level of competition isn't crazy. I watched his last fight. I think Jack Della Madalena has fought much tougher guys, but that's just my opinion. So we'll talk about Jack Della Madalena first. So from what I've seen in his fight he was kind of long. He's really athletic looking. He looked like he had really good hands. So his boxing looked pretty good. He wasn't really there to be hit a lot, and he was able to touch up his opponent most of that fight. He won that fight by decision, but it was pretty obvious that he won. Like I said, good boxing. So Pete Rodriguez, seen his fight. It was on Icon Fight Series, his last fight, and it was against some guy who was like 5-1, I believe. But Pete Rodriguez, his striking looked like he had a lot of power in his hands. He took the guy down at first, started on the ground, but then he got a first-round knockout once they got back up to the feet. The combination was beautiful that he finished the guy with. Really short guy, so he definitely packs a big punch. But for this fight, Jack Della Madalena is kind of longer, and he was hard to hit. He was good at keeping his range. Sometimes he was getting in the pocket a little too close in his Contender Series fight, but sometimes you have to get in there to throw your shots. But he was able to get out quick. That was pretty key, and move his head when he wasn't able to get out quick enough. So I'm picking Jack Della Madalena by KO in that fight. Okay, so then next we're going to the featherweight division. I actually think this fight's going to be, it's one of the earlier fights. Actually, I want to just go over this quick. All these fights, I look at Tapology.com, so they might not be in exact order for prelims because the UFC website says one thing, and then Google also says another thing, and then Tapology shows a different order as well. So I just go by Tapology just to get all the fights, and then the order might change depending on UFC's schedule. So, but the next fight I broke down was Ilya Tipura versus Charles Jourdain in the 145-pound division. So both guys are up-and-comers. Ilya Tipura is undefeated, 11-0, 11 wins, 3 in the UFC. His last fight was against Ryan Hall. He's a really good grappler. He was able to kind of avoid most of the grappling exchanges and just knock him out in the first round. Most of his fights, he seems to just knock people out. He had 2 knockouts in the UFC and 1 decision. His 1 decision was against another guy who's a really good fighter, a really good striker. So made sense kind of why I went to the decision. I actually picked the other guy to win that fight, but he beat him by decision. So I was pretty impressed with that. Charles Jourdain, he's 12-4-1. He's a Canadian guy. He's from Quebec. So obviously I want the Canadian guys to win. Being a Canadian guy myself, I want to support the local people that make it to the UFC. We need a lot more Canadians in the UFC. So he's 3-1 in the UFC. So his record's dead even, but he always puts on exciting fights. Super technical striker. He has really good movement. not like a huge guy for featherweight, but his build, he wouldn't be able to drop to bantamweight, I don't think, in my opinion. He's super like lean, but he's able to get it done a lot of times at featherweight. He's beat some good guys like Duho Choi. He just beat Andre Uel, who moved up from bantamweight, but that guy has good hands as well. Like, he's a good boxer. So that was a pretty impressive fight. He's only lost to like pretty good guys too, like, and I think 2 of them were decisions, like close fights, and then one he did get submitted, but against Julian Erosa, who's a really savvy veteran who has probably about 30 plus fights. And he had 1 draw actually with that, which is a really close fight in the UFC as well. So these guys are both really good strikers. Ilya Tipura, I would say, is more of like kind of like waits for his opportunities, more of a power striker. I would say Jourdain kind of picks people apart throughout the whole fight. It's hard for me to pick. It's going to be super close, I think, but I think Tipura gets it done by decision. Even though I want the Canadian guy to win, I'm just going to pick who I think is actually going to win. I think Tipura gets this one done by decision, but Jourdain's pretty tough. I think it'll be a good fight. Okay, so then we'll go on to the women's strawweight division, 115 pounds. We got Vanessa Demopolis versus Savannah Gomez Juarez. Any names I butcher, I apologize. But Vanessa Demopolis, she's 6-4. Her record, 6 wins, 4 losses. She's currently on a 1-loss streak. And Savannah Gomez Juarez is 10-3 with 1 loss. So both these girls, I've seen most of Savannah Gomez's losses are like earlier in her career against like girls that are in the UFC now that are actually pretty good. So I don't know too much about her, but this Vanessa Demopolis girl, she has like not as good of a record, 6-4. So it looks like on paper she'll probably lose, but her 6-4, like her losses are usually by decision as well, and they're against really tough competition. So I'm actually going to pick her for this fight, Vanessa Demopolis, by submission. And then we're going to move on to the next fight here. Sorry, I'm just going to get a drink of water quick. Okay, so next is the bantamweight division, 135. Rayoni Barcelos versus Victor Henry. Man, another good fight. Like, this whole card is just stacked. It's whether people might not know a lot of the names, but like for a guy like me, I watch fights constantly. Like, I know these guys are gamers. Like, Rayoni Barcelos is a Brazilian guy. He's 16 wins, 2 losses. He's currently on a 1-loss streak, but it was by a majority decision. So for anybody that doesn't know, a majority decision is when 2 of the judges score the fight for one guy, and then one of the judges score the fight a draw. So that's how close it was. One of the judges actually had the fight scored a draw, and then 2 of the other guys scored the fight for his opponent, right? So, and it was against a really tough guy. I'm trying to recall who it was right now, but it was against somebody really tough. And then before that, he was on a tear. Like, he was crushing people. So he's going to fight Victor Henry. This guy's making his UFC debut. He's actually one of Josh Barnett's fighters, which is cool to see. I'm a huge fan of Josh Barnett. He's a old veteran of the sport, like a heavyweight guy, and just fun to watch, very entertaining, good on the microphone. So if you don't know much about Josh Barnett, I highly recommend watching some of his stuff. Like, great guy, great fighter. But we're going to talk about his fighter, Victor Henry. He's 21 wins, 5 losses, and he's making his UFC debut. So he has 26 fights already and a pretty good record, 21 wins, 5 losses. And I've looked up a lot of his opponents. He fought in Ryzen, which is it's a promotion out of Japan. They kind of are like the new school of Pride Fighting Championships. It's in the ring. Like, really exciting fights. A lot of the times they, I think they allow soccer kicks to the head and like knees to the head on a grounded opponent, which is pretty crazy. It changes the dynamic a lot. So, but he's 21 wins, 5 losses. He's making his UFC debut. I think this is going to be a really tough fight as well. Like, both guys are... This one's a hard one for me to pick, but I'm going to pick Rayoni Barcelos just because I've seen, like, some of his fights. He's a beast. I haven't really seen Victor Henry fight yet. So I'm going to pick him by decision. Okay, so then we're moving on to the female flyweight division, which is the 125-pound division. This is another actually Canadian making their debut, which is pretty exciting as well. And Jasmine Jasudavicius, I might have butchered that name, but sorry if I did. And she's fighting Kay Hansen. Now, I've been actually watching Jasmine Jasudavicius a lot of her recent fights, just because I like to watch the local people, kind of see who's next in line to make it to the big show, or just see like the level of talent out there, right? We don't get a lot of fights here in Canada. It's kind of hard for people to get, like, there's like pretty much no amateur fights whatsoever, and then pro, there's maybe a few events per year, and with everything going on right now, like, it's even harder to get fights. So it's pretty impressive that they're still able to stay active. But so she's 6-1. She just fought on the Contender Series, actually. I watched that fight. She's on a 2-fight winning streak. Before that, she lost a split decision, which was a really close fight as well. I've seen that. It's super hard when fights go to decision and they're super close. Like, I'll actually talk about that with her opponent, but sometimes they're just super close fights, and depending on how you score a fight, you can score, like, if you score more in favor of striking damage, you might score it towards somebody. If you favor it more towards control, you might score it for somebody else. So, like, it's really somebody's opinion, right? That's basing who wins these fights sometimes. Like, sometimes we'll be sitting in a room with 10 people, and like 4 people will think that person won, and 6 people will think the other person won. So it really, when you lose a split decision, I don't consider it like a loss. It's a close fight. I think almost I almost think if a fight has one judge looking the other way and 2 judges looking one way, it almost should be scored a draw, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Like, it doesn't really matter all that much, because I'm not the one judging the fights, and I'm not the one making the rules here. But I honestly think, like, fights should go to the finish regardless. But sometimes some of these guys' cardio is crazy, so I understand why they make the decisions. They'd be fighting forever. Like, Max Holloway could fight forever. Nate Diaz could fight forever. So then Nate Diaz would never lose a fight, probably. Let's be real. He's tough, and I'm getting off topic here, but just my opinion on the whole split decision thing. When it comes to giving somebody a loss, you can't look at it like a loss, really, in my opinion. But so anyway, so she's 6 wins, 2 losses. She just fought on the Contender Series. She fought a Brazilian girl who she moved up a weight class. Like, she was an atomweight girl, but she was tough. Like, she had really good striking. I actually think the Brazilian girl was winning more of the striking exchanges, but Jasudavicius was able to get her down in the first round, and like, that could have been a 10-8 round. She just smashed her on the ground. So she's coming off that so she won by decision in the Contender Series. She looked good. The other girl looked good too. Like, they both looked good. It was a good fight. But she got the contract, which was good to see, because we do need more Canadians in the UFC. So she's fighting Kay Hansen. This girl's also moving up from 115. Jasmine was a 115-pounder as well. She moved up weight class, I think, a couple fights ago. And Kay Hansen was 115 in her last fight, so she's moving up to flyweight as well. Now, I just watched her last fight against Corey McKenna, who's from Team Alpha Male, and that was a great fight as well. Very close. Like, I watched it yesterday just to rewatch it, and it was a decision. It showed a unanimous decision, so I was like, okay, like, how close was this fight, right? Like, I watched unanimous, and I was kind of shocked it was unanimous, to be honest. Like, it was a really hard fight to score. Super close. Each round, like, I think I had it 1-1 going into the third. And then the third round, Kay Hansen actually spent a lot of time on top. The striking was even for like the first minute or two. Then she spent a lot of the time on top for like 2 minutes of the third round. But this is what's the hard part about scoring fights. Corey McKenna on the bottom didn't stop like elbowing her and hitting her on the bottom. So she was kind of doing more damage. And then at the end of like maybe the last 45 seconds to a minute, she was able to reverse, and she like emptied her gas tank trying to finish, right? Like just throwing a bunch of ground and pound. So that third round was super hard to score. So I can see that fight going either way. Like for me, once again, even though they scored that unanimous, she lost Kay Hansen, but I honestly don't consider that. Like if I went back and watched that fight and like seen how the fight went, I would be like, that was so close. I don't really see how either one lost. You know what I mean? So good fight. She looked good. Fought a really good fighter in Corey McKenna. I think she's only lost one fight, Corey McKenna. And Kay Hansen always fights pretty good girls. She's had a few fights in the UFC so far. Going to be a super close fight, I think, but I can see Kay Hansen getting it done by decision. Once again, like I said, I'd rather see the Canadians win, but I'm picking this based on who I think will win. I think it'll be a good fight, though. Okay, then we're going to the bantamweight division, 135. We got Tony Gravely versus Simon Oliveira. So Tony Gravely, he's a Contender Series guy as well. He's had a few fights now in the UFC, some wins, some losses. He's currently on a 1-loss streak. He is 21 wins, 7 losses, and he's fighting Simon Oliveira, who's 18-3, 5 wins, currently on a 5-fight win streak, and he just won on the Contender Series as well. So he won his fight by split decision, I believe, on Contender Series, and he's fighting Tony Gravely. I think Tony Gravely is like, he's not really a tall guy for the division, but he's just in great shape. Like you can tell he's an athlete. Pretty well-rounded, good on the ground, has a lot of knockouts, and he's just a gamer. Like the Simon Oliveira guy has 18 wins, 3 losses, but I looked at his record and like, it doesn't look like he fought the same level of competition, to be honest. So for that one, I'm going to have to go with Tony Gravely, and I think he's probably going to end up KOing this guy. So that's my pick on that. Okay. So then we're going to the 155-pound division lightweights. So we have a veteran kind of, Matt Frivola. He's 8 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. He's currently on a 2-loss streak against good fighters. He's fighting Gennaro Valdez. He's 10-0, this guy. He's actually trains with Brandon Moreno. He was just on the Contender Series as well. Gennaro Valdez, if you look up his name and see his Contender Series fight, it was crazy. Fought a guy from Alaska. And man, this guy from Alaska was like a 9-1 underdog, and he brought it. Like he came out, he didn't care that he was a 9-1 underdog, and I love that. He came out and just tried to get a finish. Like he literally, these guys just fought their hearts out for 2 rounds, and Gennaro Valdez ended up getting a finish in the second round. But man, in the first round, that 9-1 underdog had him in trouble. Like he was lighting him up with hands. They're both lighting each other up, but Valdez was trying to get it like more like switch it up from striking to the ground, where Valdez's opponent was literally just trying to knock him out, like going for broke, like knew he was an underdog and he went after it. Like I respect that a lot. Like he wasn't buying into that whole 9-1 underdog thing. So Gennaro Valdez, though, he ended up catching him in the second round. He hit him with, I believe it was like a nice left hook, and it knocked out his opponent's mouthpiece. And then after that, he just jumped on him and got the finish. So, but that was an amazing fight for anybody who hasn't seen that fight. Like, that's, I don't know, like, there's something about that, like, just like putting everything on the line when you go in there. Like, and not, you know, like both those guys just gave their all in that fight. It's nice to see. So He won that fight, Gennaro Valdez, by knockout in the second round. He's 10-0, and the impressive thing with him is he's making his UFC debut because he just got that contract. But this is really impressive to me. Like, I looked at some of his fights, and like he was fighting some like guys with good records, which doesn't always say everything, but usually it's better than seeing guys that fought somebody with like no record whatsoever, like fighting guys that have losses and like no wins, and like, you know what I mean, like 2-5 or 11-15, like guys like that, right? He wasn't fighting guys like that, it didn't seem like. And he has 100% finish rate, so he's finished every single one of his opponents out of 10 fights, which is even more impressive. Like, it's not very common. So Frivola's a veteran. He's just lost to a guy that is like, he just got knocked out in like, I think under 10 seconds in his last fight, but it was against a guy that like, he's probably a really good up and coming prospect. I think his name's Terrence McKinney, and he just threw a jab cross. Sorry, I'm just waking up, having a hard time speaking. A jab cross, like super quick, and like one, like not even like one after the other, like same time, like jab cross, like pop, like quick, and it just like caught him off guard, put him down, and he put him out. Like, it was beautiful. So, but then Frivola fought a gamer before that, and it went to decision. I could see it going either way, honestly, but I'm picking Gennaro Valdez just based on like seeing how he fights, that pressure. I think that's might be a little too much for Vola to deal with, but he does get hit a lot. With that being said, but his chin was ridiculous. Like in that last fight, if you watch it, his chin was crazy. Like, I couldn't even believe he was taking the shots he's taking and still walking forward. Not trying to say that's a good thing, but hey, it worked for him, right? So Frivola, I think he's probably going to finish Frivola, honestly. Just the amount of pressure and the pace. Not many people are going to be able to go 3 rounds with that. It's either he's probably going to get finished or he's going to finish Frivola. But seeing as he has a 100% finish rate, he's 10-0, I'm going to actually go with this guy making his debut. So Gennaro Valdez by KO for that one. All right, so then we're on to the 170-pound division, welterweights. So we got Michael Morales versus Trevin Giles. So this Michael Morales guy, he was on the Contender Series as well. I believe he won a split decision, and maybe, I think it was a split decision. He was 12-0, or he is 12-0, 12 wins, obviously, in a row, and he's making his debut. So he's fighting Trevin Giles, who is more of like I consider guys like that have had probably 5 to 10 fights, like, I wouldn't say vets, but they've had enough fights in the UFC to have some experience, and he's beaten some good guys, and he's currently on a 1-loss streak, but I haven't really seen this Michael Morales guy fight, but I don't think he's fought in the same level of competition. So for this one, I'm just going to go with Trevin Giles by decision. It's like, I'm not a crazy fan of, like, usually I don't know as much about the guys I'm not like huge fans of, but I try to watch as much of them as I can. But Trevin Giles by decision for this one. Okay, then we're going on to the 185-pound division, middleweights. So we got the jiu-jitsu guy, obviously everybody knows, if you're in the jiu-jitsu community, Rodolfo Vieira. He's 8-1 with currently on a 1-fight win streak, and he's fighting Wellington Thurman, who is 17-5. He's also a jiu-jitsu guy. These guys are both from Brazil, and he's currently on a 1-fight win streak as well. So they both have good records. They're both on a 1-fight win streak. Both grapplers. A lot of the times with these grapplers, what happens is they're both super good on the ground. Usually it doesn't hit the ground. Usually, a lot of the times they'll end up striking. However, if one of them has the advantage striking, who I think will be, honestly, Wellington Thurman in this fight, I see him getting it done for that reason. But because of that, you never know. Rodolfo Vieira might try and take him down, see if he's got the better grappling, right? But I have Wellington Thurman winning this by decision. I think it'll be a good fight, but yeah, that's just my opinion. So then that's all of the prelims. So we're going to go on to the main card now. So the main card for UFC 270. So once again, the order's kind of mixed up, and actually the UFC website didn't even have one of these fights on their main card. Tapology didn't. I apologize about that. Tapology didn't have one of these fights showing up on their main card because there's been so many fights canceled over injuries, like people withdrawing, so they're constantly having to update this stuff, right? So first I'm going to start with, I believe this is going to be the first fight of the main card, heavyweights, 265, Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. So Spivak is 13-3 with 1 loss. Greg Hardy is 7-4 with 2 losses. Now, one thing I would say, if you guys are ever betting on fights, it's really hard to bet on heavyweight fights because they're so fluky sometimes. If a guy just touches the guy's chin, you get knocked out so easily. Even if you're the better fighter than the guy, technically, like, you can get knocked out with 1 punch. Like, perfect example of that is Alistair Overeem versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. 5 rounds, 25-minute fight. Like, Alistair Overeem was just technically superior the whole fight. Like, literally 24 minutes and 50 seconds of the fight, Alistair Overeem beat him. So he looked like he was going to win a decision. Last 10 seconds, Jairzinho Rozenstruik lands a bomb, splits his lip open, drops him. It looked devastating. The ref stopped it. Like, it's crazy. Like, you can never count these guys out in a fight. It only takes 1 shot, and that's all it took in that fight. So you can't just go. I would never want to bet on like a heavyweight fight. Like, honestly, they can go either way. But Greg Hardy, he's on a 2-loss streak. He just got knocked out from Tai Tuivasa, who's a beast. And he actually rocked Tai Tuivasa first, but then he got a little excited, seeing that he rocked him, came in, and Tai Tuivasa just landed a beautiful shot. Like, he didn't quite have the patience. He came in with his hands down and he paid for it. Like, ran right into a punch. So he got knocked out from him. And then Sergey Spivak is on a 1-loss streak as well. And that was to Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall he's like the most promising prospect at heavyweight, in my opinion, for a young guy. Like, he's maybe 26 years old, and he's just on a tear right now. He's knocking everybody out or finishing everybody. So to have a loss to him, I think before that, Spivak was on like a 3-4 fight win streak. So he's been looking good himself. He just lost to a really good up-and-coming guy, which it happens, like, especially at heavyweight. So I'm going to pick Sergey Spivak by KO. Like I said, though, I would never bet on a fight like this because both these guys have power. It just takes 1 punch. And this fight really could go either way, but I'm going to pick Spivak. So then we're going to the 170-pound division. Welterweights. So we got Michel Pereira versus Andre Fialo. Now, Michel Pereira has a lot of fights. He's 26 wins, 11 losses. He's currently on a 3-fight win streak. Brazilian guy, Andre Fialo. He's making his UFC debut. He's 14-3. Now, I looked up Andre Fialo's record. I'm pretty sure I was impressed by it. I can't remember exactly why, but I was impressed by his record. I think he might have had a lot of finishes, and he was fighting. It looked like the guy's records were pretty good. Michel Pereira, he's a little too showboaty for me. Like, I'm not a big fan of all the showboating. Like, to me, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, it's irrelevant. Some people might say, oh, well, it's to get in their head. It's like, whatever. Like, just not a fan of it. It just it's more like, I kind of take it more like disrespectful, but that's just my opinion on that. So I'm not really a big fan of Michel Pereira. And yeah, he's just a little too flashy for me. Like, I'm just not a big fan. And some people are, and that's okay. It's just my opinion. I'm going to be honest about it. Andre Fialo, I'm hoping he'll win this fight for that reason. So he's 14-3, and he's making his UFC debut as well. So I'm going to actually pick Andre Fialo by decision in this one because Pereira is tough. Like, he's hard to finish, and he's very unorthodox. That's the reason why I'm choosing. I think Andre Fialo, I was going to pick a finish because I've seen how many finishes he has. But Michel Pereira is, like, very durable. He's not, because he's very flashy, he's kind of hard for a lot of people to hit, and he moves a lot. Anytime somebody moves a lot, they're hard to hit. Like, he's very unorthodox, which is a hard fighter to fight. Right? It's not the standard guy that most, like, not the standard style that most people have, right? So, yeah, I'm going to pick Andre Fialo by decision for that. Okay, so then we go on to the bantamweight division, 135. We got Said Nurmagomedov versus Cody Stamann. Okay, so Cody Stamann, he is 19-4-1. 19 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. He's currently on a 2-loss streak. Said Nurmagomedov is 14-2, and he's currently on a 1-fight win streak. Both of these guys are really good bantamweights. I would assume probably top 15 right now. If not top 15, because that division's stacked. They might even be top 20, to be honest. 25, but man, the top like 25 guys at bantamweight, it's insane. It's such a stacked division. So it's an exciting division for that reason. There's so many possible matchups you can make. So it's definitely a division to watch for sure. So Cody Stamann, even though he's on a 2-fight loss streak, he beats a lot of really good guys. He only loses to really good guys, and they're always really close fights by like decision. He doesn't get finished. So his 2 last losses were to Merab Dvalishvili and Jimmy Rivera. Both guys are savages, different styles. Jimmy Rivera is a great striker, and Merab is a great wrestler, overall fighter, like very well rounded, but very wrestling heavy and just a cardio machine. So a lot of people can't deal with Merab. He's a beast, and he's on a tear right now as well. So he lost to 2 gamers. Don't look at that like he's going to lose this fight necessarily. Now, Said Nurmagomedov, he's 14-2, 1 win streak. Don't think he's fought the same level of competition yet. Well, I know he hasn't fought the same level of competition yet. That's just, I can see it, right? So I'm going to pick, I think it's going to be a good fight because Said is still really, really good. Like, don't get me wrong. Just because you haven't fought the level of competition doesn't mean you're not good. Like, Khabib, for years, like first 16 fights, never fought really high-level competition, but when he started fighting high-level competition, he was still able to beat all those guys. So it really doesn't always tell you the whole story. So I'm going to pick Cody Stamann, though, to win by decision, just because he's coming off 2 losses. I think he's going to really want to make a statement in this fight, but I don't think he's going to get a finish because Said's very tough. So I'm going to pick decision, Cody Stamann. Okay, so the co-main event and main event. Firstly, I'm going to say I struggle to pick these fights because I think they're going to be super competitive, or the one's a heavyweight fight. So it's heavyweight fights are the hardest to pick for me. So the co-main event, we have the champion, 125-pound division, flyweights. This is actually a trilogy fight. It's the 3rd fight for these guys. So it's Brandon Moreno. He's 19 wins, 5 losses, and 2 draws. He's currently on a 1-fight win streak. He's 5 wins, 0 losses, and 2 over his last 7 fights. So since his 2019 UFC return. So his 2 draws, one was... So he's on a 5-fight win streak. Well, not 5-fight win streak, but he has 5 wins out of his 7 last fights. And then 2 draws. He hasn't lost in those 7 fights. The 2 draws were to Figueiredo, who he's fighting this weekend. And then to Askarov, another Russian guy. He's undefeated. The only blemish on his record is that draw with Moreno. So I think he's 14-0. And 1. He hasn't lost, and that fight was a draw. Him and Moreno, super close. And I think Askar Askarov will probably end up fighting for the title soon. Either him or Kara France. They're fighting next. That's the number one contender fight for sure. There's no doubt about that. So it's the challenger, Davison Figueiredo. He's 20 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. And he's currently on a 1-loss streak, which is to Brandon Moreno. So these guys have only fought each other over the last couple of years, like year and a half period. So the first fight, what happened was Moreno and Figueiredo fought. It was super close. So Moreno kept... Figueiredo honestly probably would have won the fight by decision if it wasn't for a point deduction that happened, I believe, in the second or third round, because Figueiredo kept sticking his fingers out, and I believe he got Moreno in the eye once. But what happened was Jason Herzog, who's actually, in my opinion, the best referee. People talk about Herb Neem, but I'm a big Herzog fan. I think he's the best ref. He doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. I can't even think of one, to be honest. But they said people were kind of criticizing him for taking the point away, but he's like, I kept warning him in the fight that's why I took the point away. It's not like it was the first time he did it. I just kept seeing that he was sticking his fingers out. And I don't blame him for taking the point. Honestly, you got to keep your fingers tucked in. You can't be poking people in the eyes. Like Michael Bisping lost his eye over probably getting poked in the eye, to be honest. So you got to be super safe out there, and you got to have some rules, right? You can't just be letting people get away with this stuff. Not saying Figueiredo necessarily intentionally eye poked him, but there has to be consequence to your actions regardless, right? So Figueiredo's a savage. Moreno's a savage. They're both really good. Their second fight, however, Moreno, he brought it. And one thing I want to say first, I picked Moreno for both the first and the second fights. I always pick Brandon Moreno because he's always an underdog, and people kind of write him off, but I've seen him fight since he was on The Ultimate Fighter, and he was ranked 16 on The Ultimate Fighter. And they put him against the number 1 seed, Alexandre Pantoja, who's a savage. He was the favorite to win the whole show. And they fought, and that was such a close fight. It went to decision, and it was a war. That was another great fight. If you ever want to go back and watch one of the old Ultimate Fighters, even if you just want to watch that fight, I think it was one of the first fights. And Alexandre Pantoja, he's a savage too, versus Moreno. Those guys both fought their hearts out, and it was super close. Moreno gained so much respect after that fight because he was seeded number 16. He was literally the lowest seed on the fight, on the whole Ultimate Fighter, and now he's the champion. So I love the underdog story. I love it. Nobody can ever... People can say what they want, but ultimately, when you get in there, you're the one who's going to prove everybody wrong. So I've always been a fan of Moreno for that reason, because people just write him off, and he always proves everybody wrong, and I love it. So the second fight, though, he fought Figueiredo. I picked him for that one. I didn't see it I didn't see him being that dominant, though. I haven't seen Figueiredo be dominated like that. So Moreno pretty much... Yeah, he fought a perfect fight in that second fight and finished him with a rear naked choke in the third round, I believe. So with that being said, Figueiredo, I like what he's doing for this third fight. I'm not going to say it's going to be a complete write-off again for Moreno. I think this fight's actually going to be closer than the second fight. First fight was so close, so I think it's going to be similar to that first fight. Figueiredo, he's been training with Henry Cejudo, and one thing about Henry Cejudo is a lot of people might hate on him for whatever reasons, but that guy, he knows how to compete. He's got heart. He's gained a lot of respect. I was never a huge fan of his, but over the last 3-4 fights of his, I gained a lot of respect for that guy. He has no quit in him whatsoever. He's willing to die in that cage. He really is, and you got to respect that. If you want to be the best in the world, you have to be willing to sacrifice that, right? So Figueiredo's been training with him. I really think that's going to benefit him. Just the mindset of Cejudo alone. And Figueiredo is kind of already a savage, but you could clearly see in the second fight there was holes in his wrestling. Moreno was able to take him down kind of at will. and there wasn't much resistance to those takedowns. So I could even see Figueiredo maybe trying to shoot some of his own takedowns in this fight, just to really kind of get Moreno thinking that Figueiredo's not just going to strike with him either, right? So, because that's what Moreno did to him. He would strike, he'd take him down, he'd strike again, take him down, and he finished him on the ground. So Moreno fought like that perfect shoot boxing like kind of style where you strike into shooting takedowns, strike into shooting takedowns, right? But his striking looked super crisp too. Like he looked so much faster than Figueiredo, and looked really good in that second fight. But I think this third one with Figgy training with Henry Cejudo, I think it's going to be a much more competitive fight. I just have a feeling. Like, I don't know what it is, and I actually feel like he could possibly win this fight. But with that being said, I'll never root against Moreno because he's always been the underdog regardless, in my opinion. This might actually be the first fight where I haven't looked at the betting lines or anything, but he might actually be the favorite. Like, so even in that second fight, he was probably still the underdog, right, when it comes to betting. So I think Moreno's going to win by decision. I think it's going to be a lot closer of a fight. I think it's going to be an amazing fight. Both these guys, it's always action, so, and they have the cardio to go 5 rounds, and both are super exciting guys, so I'm really amped for this fight. Okay, so Brandon Moreno by decision. I'm going to go to the main event now. It's the heavyweight championship. This is a super exciting fight too. Like, arguably I'm just as excited about both these fights, if not more, maybe the heavyweight fight a little bit, just because I haven't seen these guys fight yet. So the champion, Francis Ngannou, 16 wins, 3 losses. He's currently on a 5-fight win streak. And then he's fighting the challenger, Ciryl Gane, who's 10-0, 10 wins, 7 of those wins in the UFC. Okay, so I'm going to start with the champion first. So 16 wins, 3 losses, 5-fight win streak. Before that, he was on a 2-fight losing streak. Now, I think one of his other losses was like way earlier in his career. I don't even count that loss. So the 2 losses that he had were to Derek Lewis by decision, who's a beast. And that fight was kind of just weird. Like, it was after he came off the loss to Stipe before that, which was a 5-round. Like, Stipe just put it on him for 5 rounds, to be honest. And Ngannou just did not have the gas tank to hang with Stipe. Like, Stipe is arguably one of the best heavyweights of all time, if not the best. Just for how long he actually held the heavyweight title. People write him up, but nobody's defended it that many times. And Stipe, he's just, in my opinion, probably the best heavyweight of all time. So, so he lost to Stipe, lost to Derek Lewis, then went on a few fight win streak, beating like beasts like Alistair Overeem, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, bunch of savage strikers, and he knocked them out cold in like the first round, like no problem. Where like nobody's knocking these guys out that quick, you know what I mean? He's got that, I call it the Dimmock, the death touch. He's got that one-shot knockout power. Like, he just sleeps people like crazy. So pretty much since he won those fights, all those knockouts, what he did was he got a fight with Stipe, the rematch for the title, which he deserved. Like, he was clearly the number 1 contender. And then he fought Stipe, knocked out Stipe, I believe, in the 2nd round, and it was just like all of his knockouts, like devastating. He just puts people to sleep. Like, honestly, it's scary when he knocks people out. There's nobody hitting as hard as him in that division, I don't think, personally. So he won the title. Then he was supposed to fight, I believe, Derek Lewis for a title defense or Gane, but then he didn't fight. So then they made an interim title fight between Ciryl Gane and Derek Lewis, which Ciryl Gane actually knocked out Derek Lewis. Now, that was super impressive. Derek Lewis has been on a tear. Ciryl Gane, the guy's on a 10-fight win streak. And the impressive thing about him is his last 7 fights were wins in the UFC. Like, so he was 3-0, and then got signed to the UFC. Like, pretty much, like, that's not a lot of fights to get signed, and but they clearly saw talent and they jumped on it, which was great. Like, before that, he fought in TKO, which is an MMA promotion out of Quebec, and he won the title there within 3 fights. Like, he won his first 2 fights and then knocked out a guy who was like 8-0, and he was 2-0. Like, a guy that looked promising, and knocked him out too. Like, so the record doesn't always mean everything. The experience doesn't always mean everything if you have talent and you put in the work, right? Like, sometimes you might have been training forever, but you just don't have the experience fighting yet. So he definitely is a handful to deal with. So the way I see this fight playing out, I see Francis Ngannou, like I have to pick somebody, but it's going to be a super hard fight to pick. Based on, like, first round or 2, I see if Ngannou gets a finish, it's going to be in the first round or 2. And it's going to be by knockout, I think. The later the fight goes, the better off it is for Ciryl Gane, I believe. Francis Ngannou wants to get in boxing range for sure. Land his punches, but not necessarily clinch with Gane, I don't think. Even though he is the bigger guy, I feel like he will have the strength advantage, Ngannou. I think Ciryl Gane has really good Muay Thai clinch. And he's got very good striking, very good kicks, knees. He's more of a well-rounded technical striker, and he moves very well. He's got very good footwork. For a heavyweight, it's hard to see that, like, moving very well as a heavyweight. You don't see that very often. Another guy that, like, used to do that was Cain Velasquez, but was more with boxing. He had very good movement for a heavyweight, right? He was more, just athletic, and he could just move very well. The way Ciryl Gane fights is very smart. It's very technical approach. Like, he doesn't just go in trying to knock the guy out. He picks his shots. He picks his shots until he knows he has the guy tired and beat, and then he'll knock him out. Like, he just waits, right? Now, with that being said, Ngannou has evolved in that sense. He used to just he just knows if he lands that punch, he can put somebody out. So it's like, why would you stop doing that if you know it works, right? So I don't blame him for being aggressive. Like, that's perfect for his style and, like, for his power. Like, it works out great. So round 1 or 2, I see Francis Ngannou probably getting a knockout. If not, I see Ciryl Gane probably getting a knockout late in the fight, maybe round 4 or 5. Maybe even round 3. Round 3, it could kind of go either way. Either one of the guys could get a knockout. I was going to say originally Ciryl Gane winning by decision, because I was going to say maybe Ngannou wins the first 2 rounds. But, I mean, I could kind of see, if Ciryl Gane's going to win by decision, I can kind of see him dominating the whole fight, to be honest. Because if he can make it so Ngannou can't hit him, just miss a lot and get tired. When you miss all those shots, you're going to get tired, and you're swinging everything into those shots. Like, there's no way not to get tired. Like, and Ciryl Gane can pick them apart with, like, some nice kicks and teeps and knees and whatnot. So he's going to have to fight a really smart fight, Gane, to win this fight and not get hit. But I believe he is smart enough to do it. But I won't be surprised if he gets touched once by Ngannou, gets KO'd as well. But for the sake of this fight, I picked Ciryl Gane by KO. I think he's going to do it probably later in the fight. If I had to guess, probably round 4 or round 5, honestly. Or winning a decision just by, like, simply just outclassing him with striking. I won't be surprised if Ngannou tries to take him down, honestly. Put him against the cage and try some wrestling, because he has the size advantage. I won't be surprised if they're kind of working that in their game plan, because a lot of people aren't going to expect that, right? So sometimes you got to change things up just based, like, the guy's a good striker, Gane, but I don't really think anybody's tried to really take him down with, like, decent wrestling, right? And I'm sure over the years Ngannou has been working on his wrestling. So my pick is Cyril Gane by KO late in the fight. But I could see this fight going either way. It's really hard to pick heavyweights. Super fluky with the knockouts, and yeah, there's technique involved, but it just takes one shot from either guy really to get knocked out. So, and they both have knocked guys out in the past. So that's my picks for the fight, guys. It's going to be an amazing card from start to finish. So I wouldn't even miss the early prelims if I were you. Like, you're going to miss out on some good fights if you do. Yeah, so if you guys have your own picks, I'd be interested to see what they are in the comments. That'd be great. Yeah, just I'm curious to see what people are picking out there. Like, who you think's gonna win, the method, reasons why. Just leave some comments. It'd be pretty cool to see. If you could, just give me a like, share this video, and subscribe if you want, and that'd be great. Thank you.